You know, there's something they don't tell you about growing older together. Those little habits your spouse has, they don't magically disappear after 40 years of marriage. In fact, sometimes they feel louder. Maybe it's the way they chew their cereal in the morning, or how they always leave the cupboard doors open. Small things, sure, but when you're together day in and day out, those small things can start to feel big. Now, I'm not here to tell you that marriage after 60 is all sunshine and roses, because let's be honest, no marriage is. But what I can tell you is this: it doesn't have to drive you crazy. In fact, with a few simple shifts in how you approach these moments, you can turn frustration into connection, and maybe even find yourself laughing about it together. That's what we're talking about today. How to keep your marriage happy, strong, and yes, even fun after 60. We'll go over 4 key tips that can help you navigate those little annoyances and keep the love alive. And trust me, these aren't just fluffy ideas. They're practical, real-life strategies that couples just like you have used to make their golden years together truly golden. So, let's start with the first one, because this one might just change the way you see those little irritations forever. Tip number 1, pause before you react. Here's the thing. When your spouse does something that gets under your skin, your first instinct might be to say something right away. Maybe it's a sigh, an eye roll, or even a snippy comment. But here's what happens when we react in the moment. We often make the situation worse. That tiny annoyance suddenly becomes a full-blown argument. And before you know it, you're both upset over something that, in the grand scheme of things, really doesn't matter. So, try this instead. The next time your spouse does that thing, you know the one. Take a deep breath. Count to 3. Ask yourself, is this worth picking a fight over? Most of the time, the answer is no. And when you pause, something amazing happens. You give yourself a chance to respond with patience instead of reacting with frustration. Now, I know what you might be thinking, but they should know better by now. And hey, maybe they should. But here's the truth. After decades together, people don't change their habits easily. What can change is how you choose to handle them. And often, when you stop reacting, something funny happens. Those little annoyances start to lose their power. Tip number 2, find the humor in it. Speaking of losing power, let's talk about laughter. One of the best pieces of advice I ever got about marriage came from a couple married for 55 years. They told me, you have 2 choices. You can get mad, or you can laugh. And laughing feels a whole lot better. Now, I'm not saying you should force yourself to chuckle when you're genuinely upset, but when it comes to those silly, everyday quirks, learning to laugh about them can be a game changer. Take my friends, Bob and Linda. Bob always forgets to put the cap back on the toothpaste. Every single time. For years, Linda would get frustrated, reminding him over and over. Then one day, she decided to try something different. She started leaving little notes on the mirror. The toothpaste cap misses its partner. Or help, I'm drying out in here. With a silly doodle. Instead of another argument, they found themselves laughing about it. And guess what? Bob still forgets sometimes, but now, it's just their thing. The point is, when you can step back and see the humor in these little moments, they stop feeling like battles and start feeling like part of your shared story. And isn't that what marriage is all about? Now, we've covered pausing before you react and finding the humor. 2 powerful ways to keep those small frustrations from turning into big problems. But there's another key ingredient to a happy marriage after 60, and it's one that often gets overlooked. You know, one of the biggest myths about long-term marriage is that you have to be on the same page about everything to be happy. But here's the reality. After 60, you've both lived full lives, develop your own ways of doing things, and chances are, you're not going to suddenly start seeing eye to eye on every little detail. And that's okay. In fact, it's more than okay, it's normal. That brings us to our next tip. And honestly, this one might be the most important of all. Tip number 3, choose your battles wisely. Let me ask you something. When was the last time you had a disagreement with your spouse? Maybe it was about something small, like how to load the dishwasher, or something bigger, like how to spend your retirement savings. Here's the thing. Not every disagreement needs to turn into a full discussion. Not every pet peeve needs to be addressed. And not every little habit your spouse has needs to be fixed. Think about it this way. Every time you feel yourself getting worked up over something, ask, will this matter in a week, a month, a year? If the answer is no, then maybe it's not worth the energy. Because here's the secret happy couples know. You don't have to win every argument to have a great marriage. Sometimes the real win is just letting it go. Now, that doesn't mean you should ignore things that truly bother you. Communication is still key, but it does mean being honest with yourself about what's worth addressing and what's better off left alone. Take my neighbor, Margaret. Her husband, Frank, has a habit of telling the same stories over and over. At first, it drove her crazy. She'd interrupt him saying, "You've told this one 100 times." But then she realized something. Those stories made Frank happy. He wasn't just repeating them to annoy her. He was sharing pieces of his life that meant something to him. So instead of correcting him, she started listening, really listening, and even asking him questions about them. And you know what? Those stories became something they shared, rather than something that divided them. That's the power of choosing your battles. It's not about giving up or letting your spouse win. It's about recognizing what truly matters and what's just noise. Tip number 4, create small moments of connection. Now, let's talk about something that often gets lost in long marriages, the everyday magic of connection. When you've been together for decades, it's easy to fall into routines. You wake up, have your coffee, go about your day, and before you know it, weeks have gone by without really talking. Not about the weather or what's for dinner, but about how you're feeling, what you're dreaming about, or even just sharing a silly thought that crossed your mind. But here's the thing. Those small moments of connection, they're the glue that holds a marriage together. They're what remind you why you fell in love in the first place. And the best part, they don't have to be grand gestures. In fact, it's often the tiniest things that make the biggest difference. Try this. Tomorrow morning, instead of just handing your spouse their coffee, take an extra second to look them in the eye and say, "I'm really glad we're doing life together." Or, when you're sitting on the couch tonight, reach over and hold their hand for no reason at all. Those little moments of tenderness, they add up. They remind both of you that, even after all these years, you're still choosing each other. I'll never forget a letter I got from a viewer named Carol. She wrote that after 50 years of marriage, she and her husband had started to feel more like roommates than partners. Then one day, she decided to try something simple. She started leaving little love notes in his lunchbox, just like she did when they were first married. At first, he didn't say much about it. But then, one morning, she opened her own lunch to find a note from him. It just said, "Still crazy about you." That's the thing about connection. It doesn't take much to reignite it. Just a little intention, a little effort, and suddenly, those little annoyances don't seem so important anymore. Now, we've covered a lot so far. Pausing before you react, finding the humor, choosing your battles, and creating small moments of connection. But there's one more piece to this puzzle, and it's something that can truly transform your marriage in these later years. You know, there's a beautiful thing that happens when you've loved someone for decades. You become keepers of each other's stories. You've seen each other through career changes, child rearing, losses, triumphs, and all the ordinary days in between. That shared history is something no one else in the world has with either of you. And yet, sometimes, in the familiarity of it all, we forget to really see the person we married. That brings us to our final tip, and it's one that might just change everything. Tip number 5, fall in love with who they are now. Here's a truth worth remembering. The person you married isn't exactly the same person sitting across from you at breakfast today. None of us are. Over the years, life shapes us, softens some edges, and sharpens others. The ambitious young professional you married might now be content puttering in the garden. The free-spirited artist might have become more practical with age. And that's okay. In fact, it's beautiful if you let it be. Too often, we hold on to old expectations or compare our spouse to who they used to be. But what if, instead, we made space for who they've become? What if we looked at them with fresh eyes? The way we might look at a dear friend we haven't seen in years, noticing the new wisdom in their smile, the stories in their wrinkles, the ways they've grown. Try this exercise sometime this week when your spouse is engrossed in something, reading the paper, working on a hobby, even just watching TV. Take a quiet moment to really look at them. Notice the way their hands move, the expressions that cross their face. Remember that this person has lived an entire lifetime since you first met. Then ask yourself, what do I admire about who they've become? When my friend David did this, he told me something surprising. After 45 years of marriage, he realized he'd been nagging his wife about being too cautious with money, something that had never bothered him when they were younger. But when he really thought about it, he realized her careful nature was what allowed them to retire comfortably. That shift in perspective changed everything. Instead of irritation, he felt gratitude. This is the gift of long love, the chance to keep discovering each other year after year. Now, let's take a step back and remember what this is all about. Marriage after 60 isn't about perfection. It's not about eliminating all frustrations or agreeing on everything. It's about choosing each other day after day and all your wonderfully imperfect humanity. Think back over what we've covered. Pausing before reacting gives space for patience. Finding humor turns annoyances into inside jokes. Choosing battles wisely preserves your peace. Small moments of connection keep love alive. Loving who they are now honors your shared journey. None of these require grand gestures or dramatic changes. They're simple shifts in perspective. Tiny acts of grace you can start practicing today. I'll leave you with this thought. The quirks that drive you crazy today might just be the things you'll miss the most someday. The way they hum off key in the kitchen, how they always steal the covers, even that infuriating habit of leaving cupboard doors open. These aren't flaws, they're the fingerprints of a life built together. So the next time your spouse does that thing that makes you want to roll your eyes, take a deep breath, maybe even smile, because after all these years, you're still here, still choosing each other, still building a love story that's uniquely yours. Now I'd love to hear from you. What's one small thing you've discovered that keeps your marriage strong after 60? Share your wisdom in the comments below. Your story might be exactly what another couple needs to hear today. If this resonated with you, don't forget to like this video and subscribe for more content to help you make the most of these golden years. Remember, growing older together isn't just about adding years to your life. It's about adding love to your years. Here's to your happily ever after. Right now, exactly as you are.